Have you ever met someone so entitled, so downright insane, they'd try to bleach your beloved pet just to make it theirs? No? Well, buckle up. Because this is the story of the day our neighbor crossed a line so twisted, so vile, it sparked a chain of revenge no one saw coming. And you won't believe how it ends. If you've ever lived next to someone who made you dread the sound of your own doorbell, you might understand a fraction of what it was like living beside C.N. short for crazy neighbor. She wasn't just rude. She wasn't just annoying. She was the human embodiment of a cockroach, impossible to get rid of and always popping up where she wasn't wanted. She was in her 40s with a wild mane of black hair that looked like it had been styled with a fork and eyes that darted around like a raccoon. Every time she walked into a room, though walked isn't really accurate. She stormed in, uninvited, as if she owned the place. It wasn't enough for her to gossip on the sidewalk or wave creepily from across the yard. No, CN would actually barge into houses unannounced, poke through drawers, open cabinets, touch things that weren't hers. More than once, she helped herself to whatever was in the fridge, grabbing sodas, snacks, even leftovers, and threw a tantrum when someone dared to stop her. The worst part? CN loved playing the victim. She'd put on this pathetic, sniffling act, pouting and fake crying whenever someone confronted her. It worked too. The neighborhood was tired, older, and mostly quiet folk who hated drama. They'd just shake their heads and let her go, chalking it up to eccentricity instead of the deeply invasive, manipulative behavior it truly was. But behind those crocodile tears was a woman who had no boundaries, no respect, and no shame. If someone left their door unlocked even for 10 minutes, she'd treat it like an open invitation. She was like a stray cat, except instead of quietly begging on the porch, she'd waltz into the living room and start rummaging through your stuff. Oh, and the stealing. Yard decorations, little figurines, even garden gnomes gone. She'd snag them, plant them in her own yard, and when confronted, she'd fake shock and say someone else must have put them there. Worse, she was also caught multiple times taking things from inside people's homes, a DVD player, a jewelry box, even prescription bottles. The cops had been called on her plenty. She knew how to turn on the waterworks the moment they arrived. Neighbors were often too tired or too nice to press charges, especially since CN made every scene as dramatic and tear-filled as possible. That was her twisted superpower, making everyone else feel guilty for her behavior. And somehow, out of all the houses she could haunt, she picked my sister's as her favorite playground. Maybe it was because Sis was gentle, polite, and too kind for her own good. Maybe it was because CN was drawn to Sis's beautiful Siamese cat Lucifer. Or maybe CN just loved pushing boundaries to see how far she could go. She'd show up randomly, pound on the door until Sis opened it, and barge in babbling about Lucifer, calling him her sweet boy, and telling Sis how she wished she could just take him home. Sis always said no, trying to smile and gently push her out. But CN wouldn't go quietly. She'd plant herself on the couch, pat her thigh for Lucifer, and dig her claws deeper into Sis's patience. She also hated me, probably because I was the only one who flat out told her no. If I answered the door, I shut it in her face. If she tried to shove past me, I blocked her path. And if she so much as looked at Lucifer the wrong way, I gave her a glare sharp enough to cut glass. CN called me names, racist slurs, filthy insults, but I didn't care. If she wanted a fight, she'd pick the wrong half-Hispanic, half-stubborn-as-hell girl. Still, even I didn't know just how far CN would go to try to claim Lucifer for herself. Because it turns out this nosy menace wasn't just annoying. She was dangerous. And one day, she'd cross a line so horrific that no amount of crocodile tears would save her. And when that day came, she wasn't ready for the fury she unleashed. Not from Sis, not from me, and definitely not from Lucifer. From the moment Lucifer entered my sister's life, he wasn't just a pet, he was family. Maybe it's because their bond started in the most fragile, desperate way possible, with a kitten too small, too weak. The breeder told Sis he probably wouldn't make it. She stayed up through the exhaustion, napping on the couch with the kitten tucked into the crook of her neck, whispering gentle encouragements and humming lullabies to calm him. Most people would have given up, but not my sister. And his sapphire blue eyes, so big in that tiny face, sparkled with stubborn life. He followed her everywhere, shadow-like, meowing if she shut the bathroom door on him. He'd wait by the window when she left for work. She'd gone through a rough patch after a nasty breakup, her confidence shattered, her self-worth crumbling. Bottle-feeding Lucifer gave her purpose, something small and precious that needed her. As he grew strong, so did she. She didn't see Lucifer as a living creature with needs, a little soul who'd fought to stay alive and who trusted Sis completely. She'd plaster on a weak smile, shuffle around awkwardly while CN reached out for Lucifer with those stubby fingers, cooing in a sickly sweet voice that made my skin crawl. She told CN he wasn't for sale, that he wasn't comfortable with strangers, that he didn't like being touched by anyone but her. But CN brushed all that off, making comments like, "Oh, he'll come around once he gets used to me," or, "If you ever get tired of him, I'll take him in a heartbeat." Lucifer, wise as ever, usually bolted the second she entered, hiding in the bedroom or perching on a bookshelf out of reach. No, she saw him like an accessory. Something beautiful she wanted to own, to show off. She wanted to believe people could be better if you just showed them enough kindness. She didn't realize she was trying to come between a bond forged in sleepless nights, bottle feedings, and the stubborn refusal to give up. And greet her at the door the second she came home, brushing against her legs with a low, rumbling purr. That if she just kept pushing, kept visiting, kept demanding, she'd get what she wanted. And tail, those mesmerizing blue eyes that seemed to look right through you. Sis named him Lucifer partly because of the mischief that began to gleam in his gaze, but also because he was her little fighter, her miracle, her devil child survivor. And too sickly to even be noticed by his own mother. Lucifer had been the runt of the litter, tiny and shivering, cast aside by his mother who refused to nurse him. No amount of money, pressure, or guilt-tripping would change that. She took him home, bundled in a soft towel, and fed him formula with a little dropper every few hours, day and night. He'd watch people from high perches, tail flicking, sizing them up before deciding if they deserved to touch him. He was affectionate only on his own terms, curling up on Sis's lap or shoulder when he wanted love, and lay his paw on her chest like he was guarding her heart. If anyone raised their voice at her, he'd appear out of nowhere, ears back, ready to protect, and making it clear with a flick of his claws when he wanted space. Slowly, painfully, that scrawny little scrap of fur grew. His ears perked up, his legs got steady. Lucifer wasn't like other cats. He was clever in a calculating, almost eerie way. But when it came to Sis, Lucifer was fiercely devoted. When Sis cried over stress, heartbreak, or life's endless barrage of problems, Lucifer would crawl into her lap. But his head against her chin, I think Sis saw him as more than a cat because he'd saved her too. Their connection was something sacred, a bond built on healing and survival. That's part of what made CN's constant intrusion so infuriating. Every time CN came barging in, Sis's anxiety spiked. Sis tried to set boundaries. She never once cared about Lucifer's well-being. All she saw was his sleek coat, those striking points of dark brown on his ears. Sis never raised her voice at CN, never told her off the way I did. But as much as CN pushed, Sis never gave an inch on one thing. Lucifer was hers. CN thought she could wear Sis down. But she didn't understand the fierce love Sis had for that cat. She was about to learn exactly how wrong she was. At first, CN's fascination with Lucifer seemed like just another weird quirk from a woman who built her entire personality around being everyone's unwanted houseguest. But slowly it became clear that this was different, darker, more persistent. She didn't just stop by to coo over him anymore. She started planning her visits around times when Sis was home. If Sis was coming back from work at 5, CN would be waiting out front at 4:55. A fake smile plastered on her face and some pathetic excuse ready on her lips. "Oh, I was just passing by. Mind if I come in and say hello to that sweet little angel of yours?" Sis, being too nice for her own good, rarely said no outright. But her discomfort was obvious. She'd hover nervously near the door, trying to herd CN back outside with vague talk about having other things to do. It never worked. CN would push past her, eyes already darting around for a glimpse of Lucifer, calling out in that sing-song baby voice, that made me want to throw up. Where's my handsome boy? Come out and see your Auntie Cian. Lucifer, smart creature that he was, usually disappeared the moment he heard her shrill voice. But that didn't stop her from poking around the house, opening doors, peeking into closets, lifting the edge of the couch cover as if the cat might be hiding underneath. She never asked permission, never apologized. In her warped mind, our home was just an extension of her playground. Then came the offers. The first time, Sis was trying to gently steer Cen out the front door while balancing grocery bags. Cen reached out, patted the bag, and blurted, "You know, if you ever get tired of that beautiful little creature, I'd be happy to take him off your hands." Sis blinked, startled. No, he's my baby, Cen. I could never give him up." Cen waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, come on. He'd be happier with me. Trust me. I have more time. I've owned cats before." "He likes me." Sis shook her head, voice small but firm. "No, really, he's mine." Cen scowled, lips curling into that sour twist we'd both come to know too well. "Fine. But don't expect me to keep helping you out forever," she snapped, as if she was doing us a favor just by barging into our house and terrorizing the cat. After that, the offers turned into demands. She started leaving voicemails on Sis's phone. Long, rambling messages about how unsafe our house was, how neglected Lucifer seemed to be, because he wouldn't come out to greet her, how Sis was selfish for keeping such a beautiful creature all to herself. She once even tried to hand Sis an envelope full of cash, hundreds of dollars stuffed inside, crumpled bills smelling faintly of cheap cigarettes. "Think about it," she hissed, pushing the envelope into Sis's hands before storming off in a huff when Sis refused. That was the day Sis finally called me, voice trembling, and told me how scared she was getting. "She keeps talking about how I don't deserve him," Sis whispered, glancing nervously out the window like Cen might be lurking there in the bush. She said one way or another he'd end up with her. I felt the blood drain from my face. This wasn't just a crazy neighbor with a cat obsession anymore. This was someone building a twisted fantasy in her head, one where Lucifer belonged to her. And Sis was just a hurdle in the way. I told Sis to lock every door, every window, and never let Cen inside again. If she came by, Sis should call me immediately, or better yet, call the cops. But Sis, sweet and gentle, didn't want to escalate things. "She's unstable," she murmured. "I don't want to make her worse." I hated that my sister was the kind of person who'd rather suffer in silence than risk causing someone else pain. Even someone as vile as Cen, but I could see it eating away at her. Every day Cen dropped by. Every day Sis felt trapped in her own home, clutching Lucifer close, dreading the next knock at the door. Cen started peeking over the backyard fence, staring into Sis's kitchen window at odd hours. Once, I caught her there in the dusk, standing on tiptoe with her greasy hair falling into her eyes, a manic grin on her face as she peered inside. "What the hell are you doing?" I yelled, storming out onto the patio. She flinched but didn't leave. "Just saying hi to my little prince," she chirped. Then she glared at me. "Maybe you should mind your own business," I threatened to call the cops. She flipped me off and disappeared into the dark. Sis was rattled for days after that. She didn't sleep well. Lucifer barely left her side, trailing her from room to room, tail flicking anxiously every time he heard a sound at the door. Cen thought she could grind Sis down with relentless visits, guilt-tripping, insults, and cash bribes. She thought Sis would finally break and hand over Lucifer just to make the nightmare stop. What she didn't realize was that every shove, every demand, every hateful stare she threw at us only made us more determined to protect him. Cen was building up to something, that much was clear. We just didn't know when or how she'd finally snap. But we found out soon enough. And when we did, the claws came out. It started like any other day. Sis was at home, humming softly as she folded laundry in the living room, while Lucifer lounged by the window, watching the birds outside with that calm, regal stare only cats can pull off. The air felt peaceful, warm sunlight streaming in through the blinds. But peace never lasted long when it came to Cen. I showed up that afternoon with a bag of groceries. Sis looked tense, eyes flicking toward the door every time a car drove by. "She's been circling the house again," Sis whispered as I set the groceries on the kitchen counter. She just stood out by the fence, staring in for like 10 minutes. I clenched my fists. You call me if she even thinks about stepping onto the porch, I growled. Sis nodded, though I could see how worn down she was. Weeks of CNS harassment had drained her spirit. We did our best to ignore the dread in the air. Sis made tea. I teased Lucifer about his fluffy belly, and for a moment the world felt normal again. Then, it happened. In the middle of chatting, Sis glanced toward the window and froze. The door, she gasped. I spun around. The back door had been left ajar. Just a crack barely wide enough for a breeze, but that was enough. In a streak of cream and chocolate fur, Lucifer darted out into the yard. Lucy! Sis cried, bolting after him. I dropped the teacup I was holding, porcelain shattering as I tore after her. We scrambled outside, calling his name, scanning under bush, behind flower pots around the base of the fence. Sis's voice cracked with panic, calling out in that trembling tone only a mother can manage. Lucifer, baby, come back! Please come back to mommy. But he was gone. We searched frantically, the world narrowing to the pounding of our feet on grass, the rustle of leaves, the empty hush of the neighborhood. Minutes felt like hours. And with every second that ticked by, the dread in my stomach curdled into something sickly and cold. Then, from across the fence, we heard it. A scream, high-pitched, human followed by a furious yowl that made my skin crawl. We both whipped our heads toward CNS house. Lucifer, Sis breathed, then she ran. We sprinted to the fence just as the doggy door on CNS back door slammed open. Out shot Lucifer like a demon unleashed, tail and one rear paw dripping with something wet. Something that stung my nose with a harsh chemical smell I recognized instantly. Bleach. He bolted past us and into Sis's house, vanishing into the safety of the living room. Behind him, the back door flew open, and there she was, CN, face twisted in rage, one hand clamped over her bleeding cheek, the other clutching a rubber glove soaked red. That damn cat! She screeched, voice cracking with rage. Her hair was wild, sticking out at odd angles, and her eyes gleamed with manic fury. I saw deep scratches raking across her cheek, and fresh blood oozing between her fingers. Her glove was shredded, red seeping through the cracks. You bitch! She shrieked, lunging through the bush toward us. That little monster attacked me. I was just minding my own business. Cooking in my own kitchen and he attacked me. It was such obvious bullshit I almost laughed. But Sis didn't even hesitate. She shoved past me, hands shaking, eyes blazing with protective rage. You touched him! She screamed. What the hell did you do to him? Cian's eyes flashed.
He wandered into my kitchen. I tried to pick him up and he attacked me.
That animal is dangerous. He needs to be put down. And then she said it. The thing that turned Sis from terrified to murderous. I'm calling animal control and having that thing put down. You're going to pay my medical bills. You worthless. She never finished. Sis hauled back and punched her, hard, square in the face. Cian stumbled backward, howling, clutching her now swollen eye. Sis's voice shook as she snarled. Go screw yourself with a curling iron. You lay another finger on my cat, I will bury you. Then she turned and ran inside to find Lucifer. I stayed outside, phone already out, dialing the police as Cian writhed in the grass, shrieking curses and slurs at us. She called Sis the N-word. She called me a half-breed slut. She spat blood onto the lawn, raving about how she'd have Lucifer destroyed and how we'd both be in jail by nightfall. I barely heard her. My mind was locked on Sis, on Lucifer, on the smell of bleach still lingering in the air. That image of his terrified eyes, fur matted with chemicals, claw marks on CNS face, burned into my memory. The entire scene felt unreal. Like some nightmare we couldn't wake from. 5 minutes ago, we were drinking tea. Now CN was bleeding on the lawn, Sis was sobbing in the kitchen, and our quiet lives had exploded into chaos. As I gave my statement to the cops, I kept glancing back at the house, where Sis was washing Lucifer in the sink, voice soft and broken. Promising him it was okay, that he was safe now, CN screamed about lawsuits, about revenge, about calling animal control, but the blood trail led right back into her house. And the truth, ugly, undeniable, was just waiting for the cops to find it. It all happened so fast, it felt like a fever dream. One moment, Sis and I were sprinting back into her yard, trying to process the bleach-stained blur that was Lucifer fleeing past us. Her hair looked like a black bird's nest, sticking to the raw claw marks gouged into her face. She was screaming curses, half incoherent, spit flying from her mouth as she staggered through the bush, trying to get into Sis's yard. Her voice turned shrill and ugly, every other word a slur, her spit flecking the grass as she stumbled closer. The next, we were frozen at the fence, staring at Cien as she stumbled out of her house like some horror movie monster, shrieking at the top of her lungs. She tried to change him. She tried to claim him. But she didn't understand Lucifer didn't. Know that, beneath that soft fur and regal posture, beat the heart of a warrior who once fought death itself as a sickly kitten. Blood streaked down her cheek in jagged lines, and the glove on her left hand, those cheap drugstore hair dye gloves, was shredded and dripping bright red. "I'm calling animal control," she hissed. "And I'll tell them you attacked me too. You filthy half-breed slut, your sister's a worthless N," the crack echoed across the yard. Cien fell onto her ass in the grass, shrieking like a banshee, clutching her face. "You bitches!" she screeched. "You trained that thing to attack me. You think you can get away with this? I swear to God I will destroy you. He just ran into my kitchen. I was trying to cook. He attacked me for no reason." She howled, one hand gripping the ragged glove like she thought it would somehow prove her innocence. I snapped, keeping the phone pressed to my ear. "Don't move. The cops are on their way. I'm going to have that little monster euthanized. He's a danger? You think you can just let him wander around attacking innocent people?" She called us every vile name in the book, threatened to kill Lucifer herself, threatened to burn our house down. Cien was still ranting in her yard when they pulled up, waving her bloody hand and screaming about how she'd been attacked by those filthy whores and their demonic cat. She even showed the officer her shirt, still streaked with Cien's bloody handprint from when she'd shoved her. She spat. One officer slipped into Cien's house after following the trail of blood. Moments later, he called out for backup. Sis had already dashed inside to get to Lucifer, but I stayed frozen where I was, phone clutched in my hand, watching as Cien pushed herself through the hedges separating our yards. "My eye!" He tried to blind me. But she couldn't move fast. Her shredded glove left a trail of blood on the grass, bright drops staining the green like fallen petals. I glanced over my shoulder to see her gently toweling him dry, tears running down her cheeks. Lucifer was trembling in her arms, tiny angry yowls rasping in his throat, fur patchy with bleached spots that looked like ugly burns. Her left eye was already swelling shut from Sis's punch. Cien wasn't just some annoying neighbor anymore. She was a monster. She lunged at me, blood and bleach smeared on her sleeve, and shoved me hard in the shoulder. That was when Sis came back out. Her hands were wet from washing Lucifer, her shirt stained with bleach and cat hair. Her eyes were blazing. Without a word, Sis hauled back and decked Cien right in the eye. "You will never touch my cat again," Sis hissed, voice trembling with fury. Cien scrambled backward, still screaming, flailing her bloody hand at Sis. I called the cops while Cien howled in the yard, dragging herself to her feet, ranting about how she'd done nothing wrong, about how Lucifer had come into her house uninvited, how he'd attacked her out of nowhere. "Yeah, I bet the bleach was just part of your recipe, huh?" She shrieked and staggered toward her own yard, yelling about lawyers and how we'd both go to jail. Inside, I could hear Sis talking to Lucifer, her voice shaky but soft. I felt my rage spike again, looking at him, at the raw, scared animal clinging to Sis for dear life. The cops showed up fast. 2 squat cars screeched to a stop out front, lights flashing red and blue across our little suburban street. The officers tried to calm her down, but Cien wouldn't stop screaming, wouldn't stop spitting venom. Cien tried to interrupt, shrieking that we were lying, that we'd attacked her, but the cops were already frowning. What he found in there would blow this whole thing wide open. If there was one thing Cien was good at besides barging into people's homes uninvited, it was twisting the truth into some pathetic sob story where she was always the victim. And that day, with cops on the lawn and her face swelling into a purple lump, she went into overdrive. As the officer questioned her, she started wailing like she'd just been mugged. They attacked me, she screeched, tears pouring down her bloody cheek, voice breaking with fake sobs. I was just cooking in my kitchen when that cat ran in out of nowhere and clawed me. Look at me. Look what IT did. Her words tumbled out in a breathless rush, each more dramatic than the last. I was minding my own business. That thing is dangerous. It should be put down. And then those filthy girls, those disgusting little half-breed trash piles, they attacked me too. One of them punched me. The other one kicked me in the stomach. Look at my shirt. She tried to lift her shirt to show. Well, I'm not sure what. There wasn't a mark on her stomach. The cop frowned, clearly skeptical. Ma'am, you said the cat ran into your house and attacked you unprovoked?
Yes,
Cien shrieked, voice cracking. It tried to kill me. And they both attacked me too. They're violent. They've always been jealous of me. Everyone here knows it. Meanwhile, the other officer came out of CNS house, radio crackling. He looked grim. We've got a lot of blood in here. There's a sink full of fur, bleach, and what looks like a hair dye kit. And the cat's collar is in her trash can. CNS head snapped around so fast I thought she'd break her neck. What? You can't go in my house. That's illegal. That's my property. The cop ignored her. We've also found multiple boxes of electronics with store tags still attached, and a bunch of prescription bottles that don't have her name on them. She got nervous when I asked about them. CNS shrieks rose another octave. Those aren't stolen. I bought those. Those were gifts. And those pills, they gave them to me. They're lying. They're filthy half-breed liars. Look at them. You know how they are. Her voice dripped with venom. She spat the slurs out like poison, calling Sis the N-word again, calling me a wetback slut. The cops' faces hardened instantly. Ma'am, that language is unacceptable, one of them snapped. You need to calm down. Fuck you. She screamed, hurling every vile word she could think of. They set me up. They trained that monster to attack me. They re-dangerous. They don't belong here. They re-ruining the neighborhood. You should arrest them, not me. They're criminals, dirty little whores. The cop cut her off. That's enough, he said, stepping forward. Turn around, hands behind your back. What? You can't arrest me, she shrieked, flailing as the cop grabbed her arms. I'm the victim here. They're lying, they're filthy animals. She kept screaming as he cuffed her, dragging her toward the squad car. Neighbors had gathered on their porches, staring at the spectacle with wide eyes. Some were shaking their heads, others whispering to each other. Nobody looked surprised. Everyone knew Cien had been trouble from the start. Sis stood on our porch, arms wrapped tight around Lucifer, who was still trembling, his patched fur sticking up in tufts. Her face was pale, streaked with tears, but her eyes were steady. She didn't look away as they pushed Cien into the car, still shrieking curses out the window. She's going to come after us, Sis whispered, voice hoarse. She's going to make this worse. I shook my head, stepping beside her. No, she's done. We've got everything. They saw the bleach. They saw the fur. They hurt her. Still, as CNS voice faded into the distance, Sis trembled. She said she wanted him put down, she whispered, stroking Lucifer's ears gently. She was going to kill him. I felt a surge of pure fury. She never touch him again, I promised, voice low. And if she tries, we'll bury her. Inside the squad car, Cien was still ranting, face pressed to the window, eyes wild and bloodshot. She shrieked that we'd regret this, that she'd ruin us, that we'd never sleep again. But the cop just shut the door, cutting off her screeches, and the car pulled away into the twilight. The silence afterward felt heavy, like the moment after a storm when the air still crackled with leftover lightning. I finally exhaled, realizing my hands were still clenched so hard my knuckles had turned white. I glanced at Sis. You okay? I asked softly. She nodded slowly, hugging Lucifer tighter. I just want him to be safe, she whispered. I just want this to be over. I put my arm around her. It is, I said, but deep down I knew it wasn't really over. Not yet. The fallout was just beginning. Cien might be gone for the night, but the scars she'd left on Sis and on Lucifer would take time to heal. For now, though, we had our little family back. And that was enough. But we'd soon learn CN's twisted games weren't entirely finished. Because even from behind bars, she still tried to claw her way back into our lives. For weeks, Sis had held back. She'd swallowed her fear every time CN barged in, gritted her teeth through the insults, and tried to politely push her out the door without creating more chaos. All the quiet anger, the pent-up fear, the dread that had been twisting her stomach for months, it all ignited in that split second. And Sis did something none of us ever expected from her. But the moment CN threatened Lucifer, when she said she was calling animal control to put him down, something in Sis snapped. The shock faded quickly, replaced by animalistic fury. If you ever come near my cat again, if you can think about hurting him, I will end you. CN started screeching again, high and shrill, calling Sis every name she could think of, spitting slurs and curses like poison. But Sis didn't flinch. She just stood there, fists clenched at her sides, chest heaving. It was like watching a flame finally catch on dry tinder. The girl who rescued stray animals, who spent her weekends volunteering at the shelter, who always tried to see the good in people. But CN had crossed a line no one could come back from. She hit CN. Lucifer was perched on the counter beside her, still trembling, fur patchy and yellow-stained but alive. Sis bent down and buried her face in his neck, sobbing softly as he let out a tired, raspy purr. It wasn't some sloppy, panicked swing either. And if she comes back, we'll stop her again. It was precise, fueled by rage and love and the primal need to protect. But I saw the way she kept glancing nervously at the house. At the spot on the porch where Sis had stood like a lioness guarding her cub. She was rattled, but Sis didn't waver. She told the officers exactly what happened, voice calm but firm. And there was nothing scarier to her than a woman who wasn't afraid to hit back. She even showed them the bloody handprint CN had left on her shirt when she shoved her first, the scratches on her arms from trying to yank Lucifer away. I stood there, half stunned, watching as CN clambered to her feet. Still wailing, still hurling curses, but now backing away like a cornered animal. They knew exactly what CN was. Half the neighborhood had already called in complaints about her. This time, her performance wasn't enough to save her. Her fist cracked against CN's face with a sharp, sickening thud. I saw the shock ripple across CN's expression, her eyes going wide as she stumbled back onto the grass, clutching her face. But Sis leaned in close, glaring at her with a fury I'd never seen before. "Go screw yourself with a hot curling iron," she snarled. "Call whoever you want. Touch my cat again and see what happens." She didn't hide behind me or flinch when CN hurled more racist garbage from across the yard. She stood tall, holding Lucifer close, eyes locked on CN with a cold fury I knew wouldn't fade anytime soon. Blood trickled between her fingers from where Sis's knuckles had split the skin just below CN's eye. "I swear to God," Sis hissed, voice trembling with rage. CN sputtered something about lawyers, about police, about how we go to jail for assault. CN recoiled, clutching her cheek, eyes wide and wet. For the first time, she looked truly scared. And Sis didn't wait for an answer. She turned her back on her, ran into the house, and slammed the door shut behind her. My sister had never hit anyone in her life. She was the kind one, the gentle one. When I followed Sis inside, she was in the kitchen, splashing water over her scraped knuckles. Her hands shook, her breath ragged. I placed my hand on her back. "You did the right thing," I whispered. She didn't look up. "She was going to kill him," she breathed. I had to stop her." "You did," I said, squeezing her shoulder. Outside, we could still hear CN screaming, ranting to anyone who'd listen about how we were violent, how we'd attacked her for no reason, how she'd done nothing wrong. For once, Sis's kindness wasn't something CN could exploit. And that scared the hell out of her. When the cops finally showed up, CN launched into her usual hysterics, playing the victim, sobbing about how she'd been attacked. I could see the respect in the officers' eyes as they listened. And Sis? She was done being afraid. That day, Sis stopped being the quiet girl who let CN walk all over her. That day, she became a fighter. And CN? She realized, maybe for the first time, that she wasn't the biggest bully on the block anymore. The wailing sirens were almost a relief. For weeks, Sis and I had lived with this low-grade dread simmering under every second, always waiting for the next time CN would show up at the door, always bracing for her shrill voice demanding to see Lucifer. But when those red and blue lights flashed across the front yard and the squad cars screeched to a halt, I felt that dread drain out of me, replaced by something that tasted almost like hope. CN, of course, had no intention of going quietly. Even as the first officer stepped out of his cruiser, she was screaming at the top of her lungs, pointing at Sis's house, ranting about how we were dangerous, how we'd attacked her with no provocation. Blood was still dripping down her cheek from where Sis had punched her, mixing with the scratches from Lucifer that had left bright red welts across her face and hands. "That cat tried to kill me," she shrieked, limping toward the officer, brandishing her shredded glove like it was proof of her innocence. "Look what they did, look at May. I'm pressing charges, I want them arrested now." The officer held up his hands. "Ma'am, calm down," he said, his voice steady but firm. "You're bleeding. We'll get you medical help, but first we need to understand what happened." CN launched into her story, spinning the same ridiculous lie we'd already heard, that she'd been innocently bleaching her hair when Lucifer just wandered in through the doggy door and attacked her for no reason. She claimed she'd screamed, and then Sis and I had charged into her yard and beat her up, no mention, of course, of the racist slurs she de-screamed, or how she de-threatened to have Lucifer put down. But before she could finish, the other officer called out from CN's open back door. "You'd better come see this," he said, voice low. The first cop gave CN a look, then followed his partner inside. I could see them through the doorway, see the way their faces changed when they spotted the sink, stained with blood, tufts of cream-colored fur clinging to the drain, the open box of hair bleach kit tossed on the floor. One officer picked up Lucifer's collar out of the trash, holding it delicately with 2 fingers. CN must have realized what they'd found because she started shrieking even louder, lunging toward the door. "You can't go in there. That's my house. You can't touch my stuff. Those bitches planted it. They're setting me up." The cop at the door blocked her path. "Ma'am, step back," he ordered. She tried to shove past him, but he held her steady, gently pushing her back into the yard. Another cop walked over to us, notebook in hand. "Tell me exactly what happened," he said gently. I didn't hold back. I told him about CN's harassment over the past few weeks, about her obsession with Lucifer, about the bleach and the attempts to bribe Sis into handing him over. I described how Lucifer had bolted out the back door, how we heard CN screaming, how the smell of bleach hit us as Lucifer ran past, tail soaked and patchy with the chemical, his fur stuck together in clumps. The officer listened quietly, nodding occasionally, glancing up at Sis when I finished. "Do you want to add anything?" he asked her softly. Sis swallowed hard, eyes glistening. "She tried to change him," she whispered. "She wanted to make him look different so she could keep him, I think. He was terrified. He never runs from me like that. He came back covered in bleach. I don't know what she would have done to him if we hadn't gotten there." The cop scribbled more notes. "And the punch?" he asked gently. Sis stiffened, arms tightening around Lucifer. "She shoved me first," she said, voice shaking but steady. "She said she was going to call animal control and have him put down. I couldn't let her touch him again." The cop nodded, then stepped away to confer with his partner. I saw the 2 of them trade glances, their faces hard and serious. Meanwhile, CN was still screaming, though her voice was growing hoarse, the hysteria turning into snarling, ragged threats about how she'd ruin our lives and make us pay. After a few minutes, the officer returned. He looked tired, like he'd seen too many people like CN in his career. "We're going to take her in," he said quietly. "We'll sort out the rest at the station. We've got enough probable cause for trespassing, theft, and animal cruelty, and with the other things we found in her house, I suspect there'll be more charges coming." CN erupted as they handcuffed her, flailing and shrieking, calling the cops traitors, screaming about lawyers and how she'd sue the whole department. But they barely flinched, guiding her toward the car with practiced calm. As they shut the door on her ranting face, a heavy silence fell over the yard. Sis let out a shuddering breath, finally sinking onto the porch steps, cradling Lucifer in her arms. She's gone, I whispered, squeezing her shoulder. It's over. But Sis shook her head, eyes still locked on the squad car as it pulled away. It's never really over with people like her, she murmured. But at least tonight, he's safe. I nodded, holding her tight as the lights faded into the distance. And in that moment, even with the fear still coiled in my stomach, I believed her. Cien was gone for now. But the scars she'd left would take time to fade. And we were ready to fight every day to protect Lucifer, no matter what came next. As the cops led Cien away, shrieking and cursing like some feral animal, the tension in the yard eased. But inside her house, chaos still waited, a messy testament to just how twisted and entitled she really was. Sis and I stayed on the porch, huddled together, watching from a distance. Blood-smeared and ringed with tufts of Lucifer's pale fur, the basin was stained with watery bleach streaks, the empty applicator bottle lying on the floor. On the counter beside it sat the half-empty bleach kit box, its instructions unfolded and splattered with droplets of blood. Even though Cien was gone, her house seemed to ooze that same bitter, toxic energy like her hateful spirit had seeped into the walls. The officers moved quickly, one standing guard by the door while the other began documenting everything with a body camera. The first thing the cops found was the sink. The sight made my stomach turn. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a misunderstanding. In the corner of the room, a duffel bag sat unzipped, overflowing with unopened packages of headphones and game controllers, like Cien had been preparing for some shady yard sale. Cien had deliberately grabbed Lucifer, pinned him, and tried to alter him like he was a doll she could dress up and claim for herself. None of them had Cien's name on them. Each was labeled with a different neighbor's information people we recognized immediately. The old man who lived 2 houses down and took pain meds for his back. The single mother who'd recently had surgery. The retired woman across the street who'd mentioned, just last week, that her anxiety pills had gone missing. She's going away for a while, he said quietly. Possession of stolen prescription meds is serious, and that's on top of trespassing, theft, assault, and animal cruelty. It's like a damn flea market in here. There were receipts tucked into some boxes, but they were faded and stained, suspiciously identical like they'd been photocopied a dozen times. She's got more junk in here, he called out. They'd have someone come out later to catalog and return the stolen goods to their rightful owners. One cop gave us a card, telling us to call if Cien tried to contact us again, or if we noticed anything suspicious in the coming days. Boxes of old jewelry, picture frames, random yard stuff. She looked exhausted, eyes puffy from crying, but there was a fierce relief in her expression too. She's gone, Sis whispered again, almost like she was trying to convince herself. She can't hurt him anymore. The yard smelled like crushed grass and bleach, the air heavy with that sticky humidity that clung to your skin. And Cien's raving voice with it. Sis and I just stood there, breathing, clinging to each other. Lucifer pressed his face into Sis's neck, letting out a tired, rattling purr. But for the first time in weeks, the air felt safe again. Cien's house of lies had come crashing down around her, exposing every rotten secret she'd tried to hide behind those fake smiles and crocodile tears. Still, ours, half of it still has price tags. Cien had always barged into people's homes uninvited, rummaged through drawers, peeked in cabinets, borrowed things that never got returned. But this was proof that she'd been systematically robbing the neighborhood, taking advantage of anyone too polite or tired to stop her. Cien had caused so much damage, so much fear and anger and heartbreak, and it had taken this blood, bleach, a terrified cat for the truth to finally come out. The thought made me feel sick. But that was just the beginning. In her living room, stacked neatly on the coffee table and spilling onto the floor, were boxes upon boxes of electronics, DVD players, CD players, cheap speakers, all brand new, their store stickers still attached. The officers cataloged everything, snapping pictures, noting serial numbers. Jesus, one cop muttered under his breath. Cien had always blamed kids in the neighborhood, or said someone must have stolen them from her yard. But now it was clear. She'd been hoarding stolen treasures like a twisted dragon, feeding off the chaos she created. Sis shivered beside me, clutching Lucifer to her chest.
He was calmer now, though his tail still flicked nervously every time he caught the lingering chemical scent in the air.
But the worst was yet to come. In the kitchen, the officers found a cluster of prescription pill bottles piled on the counter. Sis pressed a hand over her mouth, eyes wide. She was stealing them, she whispered. From everyone. I nodded numbly. It made sense. The cop who'd been collecting the pill bottles gave us a weary look. I felt a bitter satisfaction at that, but also something hollow. Another cop emerged from the spare bedroom, shaking his head. Sis let out a shaky laugh. She was like a magpie, she murmured, just collecting shiny things and stashing them here. I remembered all the times neighbors had complained about missing decorations. Little garden statues, even wind chimes that vanished off porches. Finally, the officers wrapped up their search, securing the house as evidence. I tucked the card into my pocket, glancing at Sis. I nodded. She's gone, I echoed. And we're not letting her back in. The sun had set fully by then, painting the sky in dark purples and deep orange streaks. As the last squad car pulled away, taking the catalogued evidence. The nightmare wasn't completely over yet. There'd be questions, reports, maybe even a court date. But the worst part was done. And as the door closed behind us that night, Sis looked at me with tear-streaked cheeks and whispered, "She picked the wrong cat." She was right. And the wrong family, too. That night, after the cops left and the yard fell quiet, Sis and I focused on the only thing that really mattered, Lucifer. He was still trembling, his sleek fur patchy with ugly yellow streaks where the bleach had burned into his coat. Sis carried him into the bathroom, gently laying him on a towel in the sink. I held the sprayer as she poured lukewarm water over his tail and back paw, washing away every last trace of chemicals. He let out weak, pitiful little meows at first, his body flinching with every touch, but he didn't fight us. He knew we were helping him. Sis whispered soft, soothing words, her voice hoarse from crying. She promised him over and over that he was safe, that no one would ever hurt him again, that he was strong and brave and loved more than anything in this world. When the water finally ran clear, Sis dabbed him dry with a fluffy towel, inspecting the patches of discolored fur with careful fingers. There were no open burns, thank God, but the skin underneath was pink and sensitive. The harsh chemicals had stripped the sheen from his coat, leaving it ragged in places. He's going to look like a little patchwork monster for a while, I joked weakly, trying to lighten the air. Sis let out a tearful laugh, burying her face in Lucifer's damp neck. "I don't care how he looks," she whispered fiercely. "He's mine. He's alive. That's all that matters." For the next hour, we set up a little nest in the laundry room, warm blankets, a heating pad on low, fresh water, and a few of his favorite toys. Lucifer huddled there, still shivering, while Sis stayed beside him, refusing to leave even when I tried to pull her away to eat something. It was past midnight when Lucifer finally calmed down enough to start grooming himself. His tongue flicked out, cleaning the spots we hadn't been able to reach with the sprayer. His ears twitched as he glanced up at Sis, letting out a low, grumbling purr that vibrated through his battered little body. Sis smiled through her tears.
"He's so strong," she breathed.
He's been fighting since the day he was born. I should have known he'd fight her off too." I nodded, reaching out to scratch Lucifer gently under the chin. He pressed his head into my fingers, the smallest sign of trust, and I felt my heart clench. We watched him for hours, taking turns dozing in a chair while Sis kept a soft hand on his back, as if afraid he might disappear if she let go. Every time his tail twitched or he shifted his weight, she murmured a soft reassurance, promising him he was safe, that the nightmare was over. Over the next few days, Lucifer slowly regained his strength. He started walking the house again, tail low but steady, sticking close to Sis's legs like a little shadow. The patchy bleach stains stayed, ugly and glaring, but he didn't seem to care. He even hissed at the living room window once when a neighbor's cat passed by, as if reminding the world he was still king of this house. We took him to the vet to be sure he was okay. The vet cleaned him up further, gave us a special salve for his irritated skin, and told Sis exactly what we'd hoped to hear. He'd be fine. A little traumatized maybe, but healthy. A survivor. When we got home, Sis carried him through every room of the house, whispering to him about how he was safe, how this was his territory. how no one would ever take it, or him away. And he listened, big blue eyes blinking slowly, tail curling around her arm like he understood every word. By the end of the week, the trembling had stopped. He started lounging in sunny spots again, though he never strayed far from where Sis was sitting. He'd wake from naps with sudden starts sometimes, ears pinned back, eyes wide. But every time Sis reached for him, he melted into her touch, his purr rumbling to life again. The yellow patches didn't fade quickly. For months, he looked like a half-painted clown cat, a reminder of what Cien had tried to do. But Sis never stopped calling him beautiful. If anything, she seemed to love him even more fiercely, bragging to me about how brave he was, how tough he was, how he was hers, and no one else's. Lucifer had always been a fighter. He'd survived being rejected by his mother, being the runt of the litter, barely making it through his first few weeks. CNS cruelty was just another battle scar, another story that proved he wasn't just a pretty face, he was a warrior, stubborn and proud and absolutely unbreakable. And now he had us. A family ready to stand beside him, claws out, ready for any fight. CNS arrest wasn't the end of her story, at least, not the quiet fade-out she probably hoped for. Her drama followed her straight into the jail cell, where karma wasted no time catching up with her. Maybe it was because she'd been clutching that bloody glove, ranting and raving for hours, ignoring the growing pain. Or maybe it was just poetic justice. The bite wound on her hand, the one Lucifer had sunk deep into the web between her thumb and index finger, got infected almost immediately. Jail staff had to rush her to the hospital, where doctors discovered the infection had spread. The cat bite had torn into nerves and tendons, causing permanent damage. The landlord let the neighbors come by to claim stolen goods the cops released. And Sis even found a couple of her own things, random kitchen items and a potted plant that had vanished weeks earlier. They cleaned and stitched it, gave her antibiotics, and warned her she might never regain full use of that hand again. But nobody bought it. The evidence was too clear, too damning, and the judge had no patience for her hysterics. Within a day, her hand was so swollen she couldn't move her fingers. Her family refused to take her in, the neighbors wanted nothing to do with her, and the infection in her hand had left her partially crippled. She'd lost her freedom, her house, her reputation, and the cat she'd been so desperate to steal. Sometimes it comes with blood, bleach, and the broken cries of someone who thought they were untouchable. And we were more than happy to watch the door slam on CN forever. Some people only know how to bully when they think they have power. CN wasn't nearly so loud once the entire neighborhood stood up to her and the law had her in its grip. Her lawyer couldn't do much to help her, especially not with the stolen prescriptions on record. Eventually, she took a plea deal: short jail time, probation, mandatory psychiatric evaluation, and restitution payments to the people she stole from. I won't lie, I felt satisfied every time I heard an update. She terrorized us for weeks, threatened Lucifer's life, and called us vile slurs that burned in my ears. Seeing her brought low, punished for every awful thing she'd done, it felt like the universe balancing itself out. Meanwhile, the charges piled up: trespassing, theft, possession of stolen prescription medication, animal cruelty, assault. The cops didn't just find stolen goods in her house, they traced the pill bottles back to at least 4 neighbors who had filed theft reports in the past few months. CN had been using her fake friendly act to pocket anything she thought she could get away with, and now the whole neighborhood knew it. When word spread that CN was sitting in jail, barely able to write her threats and complaints with her infected hand, the neighbors stopped tiptoeing around the truth. And if you pick a fight with a cat named Lucifer, you'd better be ready to face the claws. Because revenge sometimes comes with sharp teeth and a perfectly timed right hook from a sister who won back down. People came forward, telling stories about things CN had taken: yard decorations, mail, little trinkets off coffee tables during visits. Some had let her go in the past because they were too scared or too tired to deal with the hassle of pressing charges. But after what she did to Lucifer, nobody was giving her a pass. The landlord of her rental property wasted no time either. As soon as they saw the police report listing animal cruelty and drug possession in the home they owned, they slapped her with an eviction notice: breach of contract, criminal activity, by It didn't take long for them to clear out her junk. CN tried to fight the eviction, ranting in court about how she was being discriminated against, how she was the real victim, how the cops were corrupt. She spent weeks in jail hopping between holding cells and courtrooms, trying to dodge the inevitable. We heard through the grapevine that even after she got out, she had nowhere to go. Sis never gloated over any of it. That wasn't her style, but me? We didn't see her again. Part of me always wondered if she might show up one day, lurking in the shadows, plotting revenge. But she never did. In the end, CN learned the hardest lesson of all. You can bully the world into giving you what you want. Justice, after all, isn't always clean or pretty. Looking back on it all, now the bleach, the blood, the screaming, the endless nights Sis spent sitting up with Lucifer, I still get a knot in my stomach. The kind of knot that comes from knowing just how close we came to losing something irreplaceable, and how easy it is for someone's poison to seep into your life if you let them. CN wasn't some cartoon villain twirling a mustache. She was, in a way, exactly the kind of person we're told to tolerate, to pity, to give the benefit of the doubt. The lonely neighbor, the eccentric meddler, the woman who just wants to help, even when that help feels like a cold hand around your throat. And that's the real moral of this story. There are people out there who don't understand or don't care about boundaries. People who see kindness as weakness, who think if they press hard enough, they can break you. They disguise their greed with phony smiles, their cruelty with crocodile tears. They'll cry that they are the victim when you stand up to them, twisting every truth into a lie that benefits them. For so long, Sis tried to handle CN with gentle words, forced smiles, and careful explanations. She thought if she was patient enough, reasonable enough, CN would eventually get it. She'd respect the boundaries, she'd stop showing up, she'd leave Lucifer alone. But that's not how people like CN operate. They'd push until they hit a wall that refuses to budge. Until someone fights back. It took CN threatening the life of that little cat Sis had fought so hard to save her child in fur, her survivor, her constant companion, to finally light that fire. It took violence and blood for Sis to realize you can't reason with people who don't think the rules apply to them. Some people only understand one thing: consequences. For CN, the consequence was jail, infection, eviction, and a community that finally saw her for who she truly was. For Sis, the consequence of letting CN in over and over again was fear, trauma, and the lingering scars on Lucifer's delicate skin and in his wary eyes. It still makes me sick that it had to come to that. That it took so much ugliness, so much rage, to shut CN down for good. But that's the world we live in. Evil doesn't always come with fangs and fire. Sometimes it comes in the form of a nosy neighbor, a fake smile, and the sickly sweet cooing voice of someone who thinks they can take whatever they want. I wish the moral was simple, like, be nice and people will be nice back. Or trust your neighbors and they'll always do the right thing. But the truth is harsher. Sometimes you have to fight for what you love. Sometimes you have to draw that line in the sand, stand firm, and throw the punch before someone else throws something far worse at you. I'm proud of Sis for doing exactly that. I'm proud of Lucifer for surviving it all, for trusting Sis even after someone hurt him so badly. And I'm proud of myself too, for never backing down from that psycho, for being the blunt wall Sis needed when she couldn't be strong yet. If you take anything from this story, let it be this: you have the right to protect yourself, your family, your home. You don't owe kindness to people who repeatedly cross the line. You don't owe patience to those who twist it into a weapon against you. And you sure as hell don't owe your cat or anything else you love to someone just because they think they deserve it. Boundaries matter. Standing up for them matters even more. CN thought she could get away with everything because she always had before. She believed her tears, her tantrums, her crocodile sob stories would protect her. They didn't. The day Sis hit back, literally and figuratively, was the day CN learned the world wasn't hers to control. And maybe, in the end, that's the best kind of revenge, showing someone like her that they can win. That the things they want, control, power, ownership over the lives of others, will never belong to them. Because sometimes karma takes the form of an angry Siamese cat, a terrified but unbreakable sister, and a community that finally decides enough is enough. Lucifer still has his scars. Sis still wakes up some nights, clutching him, remembering the bleach smell and the shrieks. But they're healing together. And every day that Cien isn't around is another day of peace, safety, and proof that even the worst people can be stopped when you refuse to stay silent. So protect your boundaries, protect what you love, and don't be afraid to throw that punch if you have to. Sometimes, that's the only way to end the nightmare. And that's the story of how one entitled neighbor learned the hard way. You never mess with someone's family or their cat? If you enjoyed this tale of karma and claws, hit that like button. Subscribe for more real-life revenge stories. And share this with someone who needs a reminder. Boundaries matter, and justice will find you. Thanks for watching.